Yay, welcome everyone. My name is Osha Rose. I'm the Adult Programming Coordinator here at the Rockport Library. We're so happy to have you here with Sean Gaskell, who is here all the way from Tacoma, Washington on an East Coast tour to share the Kora with all of us, this 800-year-old harp. And he's been studying almost 2 decades now in West Africa and sharing it with all of us back here. So welcome, Sean, and enjoy.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for coming out. My name is Sean, and this is the Kora. So I'm going to guess that many of you have not seen this instrument before. So the Kora usually has 21 or 22 strings. It's played with 4 fingers, so your thumbs and your index fingers. There's 2 rows of 11 strings coming down from the neck to the notched bridge here, which is called the bato in Mandinka. And then from the bato, it reaches the anchor strings down below, which are tied off to the bottom of the neck. I'll get into all of that a little bit later. But a little bit about my background. I first heard the Kora about 19 years ago, fell in love with the sound, and pretty shortly after that took my first trip to West Africa and have been performing now nearly full-time for 10 years. And so most of the songs that I'll share with you are ones that I learned from 4 teachers that I worked with. 2 are in Gambia, West Africa. The other 2 are in Senegal, one of the bordering countries, and both are on the Atlantic coastline. And so the songs are anywhere between 50 and 800 years old, so I'll be telling you about each of them and their background. Between the songs, I'll share with you some of the background and the history of the Kora, so you'll get to learn about how it's built, like the materials that are used. I'll share about the people who played the Kora and what their role is in society. And then right before the final song of the program, I'll go ahead and open up the floor for any questions that you might have. This first one that I'd like to play, this one is a 300-year-old tune. It's called Juda Jekere. It's named for Jekere Ba Bayo. He was the equivalent of a mayor in his town in the easternmost segment of Gambia back in the 1700s. And so this song is singing about kind of his how well liked he was and how respected of a leader that he was. And this is done in the Mandinka language that I'm singing in. The Mandinka language is so the Mandinka people are one of 6 indigenous groups in Gambia. It's the primary language that was spoken there, and it's the language that I was taught by the host family that I was with in Gambia. So, Juda Jekere. Thank you. This one's called Donkoma. I learned this on my very first trip to Gambia back in 2008, during my first week of that trip. And my teacher there, Moriba Kuyateh, had taken me from his family home, where I stayed for most of that trip, to a house that was like right on the beach side, kind of up on a bluff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. We were there for, I think, 3 or 4 days, that particular trip. And so come to find out a little later, this song that he taught me is kind of speaking of the ebbs and flows of the tides, the incoming and the outgoing tides of the ocean. Dankoma. This is the second song ever composed on the Kora. It is called Khalifa Ba, and it's for Khalifa Sane, and he helped to bring the Mandinka People's Empire from further off the Atlantic Ocean, not from the originating spot of the Kabu Empire, which falls into the present-day country of Guinea-Bissau, and he kind of helped coordinate the efforts to go towards the Atlantic Ocean with the expansion. And this was happening well before any of the colonial boundaries were ever drawn. But this song was written very shortly after Khalifa passed away, and it's like his eulogy, if you will. Thank you. So you can see that there's quite a few things that the Kora uses to make it. So I'm going to describe each of them to you. I'm going from the bottom, working towards the top of the instrument. So down at the very bottom, the largest item that you see is a calabash, which is a gourd that grows very much like a pumpkin. And so it grows low to the ground. You've got to pick it off the stem, cut it in half with a giant handsaw, and then scoop out all of the seeds and all the wet, gooey stuff that lives in there. So you can just use like a giant spoon and you scoop it all the way out until you hit the bottom of the calabash. And so after that, it has to dry. So you put it in the sun, and it kind of sits out in the open air for a couple of weeks, up to a month, just depending on the time of year, especially the moisture content that's out in the air. So it's going to take longer to dry if it's hot and humid out or raining. But once you've got your hollowed out calabash, you would stretch a wet animal skin over the open half, and then it gets nailed to the backside with upholstery tacks. And so it's very important to put that skin on while it's still wet, because if it's even slightly dry, it'll probably crack, and you just have to tear it off and put another one on. To get the skin on, what you would do is you would soak it in a bucket of water overnight, and then you lay it flat on the ground, and then you lay the rim of your calabash right up over the top so that the round side's facing straight up, just like that. And then you'd fold the animal skin completely over the round side of the calabash to the point where you can't see it anymore. From there, you go in with a knife and you make holes into the animal skin about where the upholstery tacks are going to go. But these holes aren't for the upholstery tacks themselves. These ones are for rope, so that you can string the rope through all the holes to tighten the animal skin. All right. So it's a big, long piece of rope that you're working with, and with that knife, you've probably made between 80 and 90 holes in the back. And so you take the end of your rope off and just tie it off to one of those holes, and then you start stringing it through all of the other holes, again, while the rim of the calabash is on the grounds. And as you're stringing that rope through all the holes, you've got your foot right up on top of that round side, and you're yanking the heck out of that rope to try to make the skin nice and tight. It's tight like a drum. Like, it's never played as a percussive instrument, but you still want that thing nice and tight, because when the weather changes, or when the seasons change, that animal skin's going to want to fluctuate. So if there's moisture in the air, the skin will naturally want to soak up some of the moisture in the air, which loosens the skin. When it loosens, the bateau, which we mentioned earlier, it's that notched bridge that are holding all the plucking strings away from the animal skin. When the skin adjusts, the bateau adjusts, which then take all of your plucking strings with it. So, if there's moisture in the air and the skin loosens, the bateau is going to sag towards the skin, bringing all the strings towards the instrument, which then loosen the strings, and they lower all the pitches of each and every string. And vice versa, air dries out, the sun comes out, the moisture leaves the skin, tightening the animal skin, I should say. The bateau goes that way, tightening all the plucking strings, which raise the pitch. So it's a lot of work to keep it in tune, if you will, as a musician. But the tighter you've got that skin on to begin with, it's going to move a lot less, which means you've got a little less work. So, all right, so you've got your string through all your holes back here, to the point where the rope that you've got is now a big star-shaped pattern. And so at that point, once the rope's covered in the calabash, you'd go ahead and take your upholstery tacks and nail them in with a hammer, one at a time, kind of working around the circle. After that, you go back to your knife and you cut just behind the upholstery tacks to remove all the rope and all of the animal hide, which then re-exposes the calabash to exactly what you see right now. All right? I did not make this one, but my teacher did. And so when you're to that point, you can go ahead and put your dowels in on the front of the instrument. So there's 2 handlebars on either side of the strings, kind of where my pinky and my thumb are right now. So those are your 2 handlebars. And then you've got the crossbar that go just behind the handlebars. All right, so you've got to cut 6 holes in the animal skin to slide those through. Once those are in, you set that whole contraption aside in the sun for about a week or 2, and you can start working on the rest of the instrument. So you're going to work on the neck at that point, which is the big long piece of wood that I'm holding on to. So what you're going to do with the neck is that you're going to put the tuning rings on. So each of these tuning rings, they are called konso in Mandinka. And the konso are also animal hide, just like the one that's going over the calabash. So they're cut long and thin, and then they're cross-braided along the neck. All right. So once they dry is the point where you can go ahead and slide your neck through the calabash. So you've got to cut 2 holes for that. So there's a hole at the very top of the calabash and another down here at the bottom. And then you've got a 3rd hole, which is the largest hole. So that one's there for 2 very important reasons. The first is so that sound can come out, and the second is so that money can go in. So, and the reason money goes into this hole is because there are many traditional songs named after people who had a role in the growth or the expansion of the Mandinka Empire. Some fought in battles, others were generals in armies, some were political leaders, and that's just a few examples of some of the traditional repertoire. So nowadays, if you're at a performance and there's a song played about someone who passed away a long time ago, I mean, they could have lived 400, 500, 600 years ago, if not more, and someone in the audience is related to this very person that the song is for, as it's being played for them, it's then this person's responsibility to come out of the audience and pay the musicians. I'll get into exactly why that happens later because it's such a huge part as to why all this music exists. And not to worry, I will not be singing about any of your families today. So at the bottom, holding everything together is an iron ring. So you drill a hole through the bottom of your neck with a power drill. And this particular ring was welded into a circular shape so that each of your anchor strings, which are very small and they're mostly blue on this Kora, can get wrapped around. And then each of your plucking strings get tied off to those anchor strings. And then finally, your plucking strings are wrapped around each of these individual konso. And so once you start bringing those up to tension them, is when you can put your bato on the bridge. And so behind your bato, there is a piece of particle board that's wrapped in a pink cloth, and that helps to prevent the bato from gouging into the animal skin and tearing a hole into it. So it's a support piece. But it's just being held by the tension of the strings. It's not actually attached to the instrument, per se. 22. And each of them have individual tuning rings, so 1 string per tuning ring. So if you push them up the neck, you are tensioning each of the strings, and bringing them down the neck will loosen them. And so you've got to use some force. You're usually using your thumbs to push on the front side of each of these konso to make them higher. Nowadays, you are starting to see Kora builders use a modified tuning system. So rather than using the konso, the tuning rings, they will use guitar-style tuning pegs. So if you were going to do that, you'd want to have you'd want to have a neck that is not a circular shape like we've got here. You'd want to have one that was shaped like a rectangle so that you could fasten your guitar tuners to the left and the right of the neck in order to maintain the parallel nature of these strings, because if you were to look closely, you would see that there are 2 parallel rows of 11 strings on the Kora, so it's very critical that you maintain the nature of that. Sorry, could you say that again?
Does it change the tonality radically? Guitar types to use in a different shape?
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Every type of kora is going to sound different. Some of it's based on the string material, some of it's based on the size of the calabash, and so on and so forth. There's so many factors. I'm going to show you how I go from one tuning to another, because there are 4 traditional tunings on the kora, and I usually play in 2 of them. I've been in a tuning called syllaba. Most of the traditional songs in this tuning were composed right along the Atlantic coast in Gambia and Senegal, where I studied. So I'm going to go to Sauta tuning, and in that one, you have tunes that were composed further away, like Mali, in the country of Mali, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Burkina Faso. So to do that, what I do is I go to the 4th of my 7 scale degrees. So here are the 7 that the kora have. And then here's your octave. So I'm going to go to the 4th. There's 2 of the 4th degree on the instrument. I'm going to go up a half step. And then here I'm going down a half step with the string that is known as the 22nd string, because for the longest time the kora only had 21 strings. They started adding the 22nd string, I believe, in the 1970s. And when they did, the elders of the time really frowned upon that change. Like, they felt that adding that 22nd string was taking away from the flavor of the traditional music. But 50 years in now, it's become really commonplace to have a 22nd, even a 23rd or 24th string. Anytime you have more than 21 strings, you're always adding an extra low note, or an extra bass note, as it's sometimes called. And you tune each of those pretty much to whichever pitch on the kora suits your fancy, if you just want to have like an extra octave in there. So this one's called Jati. Jati is a song that speaks of the importance of hospitality, taking care of one another, and just looking after each other. I learned this in Senegal last year. one's called Kanafama. This one I learned in 2018 in Gambia. This one speaks of the importance of overcoming fear. There's a bit of a change of pace on this next one here. I composed this song, didn't actually write it on paper, so none of this music is written down, and it's all passed down orally from generation to generation. It's actually very encouraged that every musician give it their own flavor on top of that. So it's like if you're in one town, you might hear the exact same melody of a song that you heard in the last town, but the people in the next town over kind of play it a little differently. And even individually, it just sounds quite a bit different. So starting around the end of my second trip, it was pretty encouraged for me to start coming up with my own songs. And so this is a 10-year-old tune. And this came at a time in my life when I was getting up very early in the morning to work in the National Park Service doing trail maintenance and construction work. And so it's just kind of a song that came to me over the course of a few months. It's called Somanda, which means morning. I'd like to give you a little background of the people who play the Kora and what their role is with all of this. So, historically, the Kora was only played by one of 5 traditional families. So these are the Jobarteh family, Kuyateh, Cissokho, and the Conte family. So historically, if you weren't born into one of those 5 families, you couldn't play the Kora or either of the siblings of the Kora. And so that's been changing quite a bit nowadays. And also, women were forbidden from playing the instruments. That's been changing a lot within the last 15 or 20 years. I feel like in the 4 trips that I've taken to West Africa, I've noticed more and more women, and especially younger girls, taking on the traditional instruments with encouragement from their families, which is such a huge change from the past. And so actually one of the most well-known touring Kora players in the world, her name is Sona Jobarteh, and I'm almost certain she's been to Boston quite a few times. In fact, I think she has, she's even like an adjunct faculty of sorts over at the Berkeley School of Music. So I feel like she comes up this way quite a bit. Definitely check her out if you get a chance. She's great. So on top of that, if you're born in one of the countries where the Kora is from, you'll find that usually your family has been doing one thing for work throughout many generations within this family lineage. So a lot of these types of work are things that we have here. I mean, there's a bazillion different things. However, the people playing these instruments are sort of in their own worlds in that they are hereditary historians. And there's a term that's given to them for this. The word that is used to describe them is called griot, G-R-I-O-T. It's a word of the French origin, and a griot has the responsibility of carrying forth 800 years worth of history, dating all the way back to the founding of the Mandinka People's Empire. And the Kora is most significant because it's used as one of the primary mediums through telling about their history through all these songs that you hear. And so when I was in West Africa, I would usually see the Kora played at 3 types of events. One was very casual and laid back, and the other 2 were very formal. A casual event would happen often inside of a griot family's compound. So that word, compound, is the word people there use to describe their homes. And it's where an extended family lives most often, anywhere between 15 and 25 people living together. And not just the griots, just about everyone that I knew lived this way. Most of the compounds had very large courtyards, open air, right in the center. And then the rooms that were occupied by each of the families were kind of just beyond that, kind of towards the walls. And so it was rare to see the Kora play solo, like you're seeing now. It was usually accompanied by other instruments. The 2 most common instruments that I would see accompanying it were the siblings, which were the balafon and the ngoni. So the balafon is a wooden xylophone that's played with 1 mallet in each hand. That's the eldest of the trio of Mandinka instruments. Between the balafon and the Kora, you've got the ngoni, N-G-O-N-I, and it's a lute that's about that long, and it's played more like a guitar, where you have to fret the strings and strum them with the other hands. If there was a singer present, there was usually a term given to them as well. They are called the Jeli Muso. So Jeli is another word for griot, the hereditary historians we're talking about. Muso means female. So if a Jeli Muso is present, all of the instruments would tune to their voice to bring out the best quality of the Jeli Muso's voice. You wanted to know well ahead of the show what their vocal range was just based on how challenging it is to tune these things. So for instance, right now, my Kora, the most dominant pitch is the note of G, and I've got 4 of them on this instrument. All right. So if my vocalist's range was down a whole step in F, I would want to know 4 or 5 days ahead of the show so that I could loosen all these strings and let them become used to getting looser. I'd be tuning maybe 2 or 3 times a day to continue loosening them in order to hit the pitch that I'm aiming for. the balafone, the wooden xylophone that I mentioned earlier, that one's even harder to tune because you would have to shave wood off the bottom of the keys, which you could use an electric sander for. But unlike the Kora, once the wood's off, you can't put it back. So it's a little harder to work with there. So having a Djeli Mousso, any band really benefited from that because when one was present, they were the lead of the entire band, kind of like the go-between the band and the audience, and they were really engaging the audience throughout the whole nights. And so the way that you would see this play out really helped the bands to earn their living as musicians because they really had to convince the audience to come up and support them. So the way that this would usually play out, which was usually the case at a wedding or a naming ceremony, is that, so the music was, like the after party, it was going late into the night. And so, you'd have a Djeli Mousso step up to the vocal mic, and the song at that time was usually played for someone who passed away a long time ago, someone of very high importance. And so the Djeli Mousso would come up, talk about this person and where they were born and how that person's contributions in life, shall we say, may have influenced that particular family lineage trajectory and how that may have even influenced society on a larger scale. She could be talking about this person for 10 or 20 minutes while the melody of the song just keeps going on in the background, and she would interject into some singing here and there, just whenever she felt like it. And so at the end of this 10 or 20 minute segment of singing about this person, she's going to look out to that audience who could number between 300 and 400 people at this point. And she's basically going to go fishing, and she's trying to figure out if anyone out there is related to this person that the song is for. And she's saying something like, anyone out there? So now, based on what I've shared with you about this person, if there's any of you that are related or have a familial connection with this person, it's now time for you to come up and show your respect in the form of a cash payment. And so, because I would be standing next to the band most of the time, or even behind them, I'd be looking out to this audience, and because the audiences were so large, you'd see maybe 5 or 6 people stand up. They'd be walking towards the band and reaching into their pockets, maybe a jacket or purse even, to see if they had any cash. They'd walk right up to the Kora player and just start putting cash into the sound hole. Some would hand it right to the Djeli Mousso as they're on the vocal mic speaking with the audience. Furthermore, others would get ambitious and walk up to some of the other individual band members. I mean, you could have as many as 7 or 8 people in a band with some of the traditional instruments that we mentioned before, but also electric guitar, electric bass, a drum set, like one that you would see in like a rock band or a jazz band. You might even have an electric keyboard, a synthesizer, and they'd all be plugged into a huge sound system, which got channeled into a couple of amplifiers that are about 10 times the size of the one behind me here. So it definitely carried more of the feeling of a rock concert because of that. And so you'd have, some audience members walking up to, maybe the guitarist, for instance, who, they were working up a good sweat at this point, all the band members. So you'd have someone get a bill of currency pasted to their sweaty forehead, and it would just kind of stick there before dropping down to the ground, or, someone may get some put into one of their pockets. And my sense is that the reason that cash was exchanged in this manner was because the people at large really value the fact that the griots have this carved out role in society to be the safekeepers of the history. The fact that their society has enabled them to be able to ask for someone's last name, anyone's last name, and then tell that person about 800 years worth of their family history on the drop of a hat means a great deal to the people. And so my feeling is that they want this information to be preserved for many years to come. And for having been financially supported for so many years, I think they just want this to continue. So I'm hoping y'all can help me out with this next song. This one's called Tira Makan. So this one goes back 800 years. So Tira Makan Traore helped to gather people together to form the first armies in the empire. And so with it, there's a call and response song. So the part where I'd like your help is the response. It's 3 words in Mandinka. When they're translated, they mean the enemy was not successful at piercing Tiramakan with a sword. So it's a loose translation. But for starters, I would like for you to please say each of the 3 words after me, one at a time. The first word is Susa. Second word is Rejo. And the last word is the name of the song. Tiramakan. Tiramakan. Good. Now say Susa, Rejo, Tiramakan. Good. All right. So now I'm going to sing those 3 words to you, and I would like you to sing them right back to me. All right. We'll just kind of pass it back and forth to each other for a little bit. It goes. Susare jotira makan, 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 susare jotira makan. Good. So that's the response. It's the same one each time. So there's 3 different call lines I'll sing to lead us into that. So the first is Muru Yebang Tiramakan. So it means the enemy tried to pierce Tiramakan with a sword. So we come in after that with Susa Rejo Tiramakan. I'll say Kelike Muru Yebang Tiramakan. So Kelike is a person warning that the sword is too close. So we respond again. Susa Rejo Tiramakan. The last call line, Ifa Tiramakan, Iba Tiramakan. So it's the father and mother of Tiramakan. Wish for his safe return home. And so we come in again after that. Susa Rejo Tiramakan. That line gets repeated and responded to. So it's a round of 4. So let's try it, all right? Muru yebang tiramakan, susare jo tiramakan, kelke muru yebang tiramakan, susare jo tiramakan, iba tiramakan, ifa tiramakan, susare jo tiramakan, iba tiramakan, ifa tiramakan, susare jo tiramakan. Good. So that's it. I think you got it. And we'll go ahead and put it with the Kora for Tiramakan. was really good. Thanks. So I first heard the Kora, I believe it was 2006, and I came to hearing it at a music festival in my hometown of Olympia, Washington, which is about 40 minutes south of where I live now in Tacoma. And so that night, I heard another foreigner, foreign to the land anyway, of where the Kora is from, like myself. He had been to Gambia quite a few times at that point, and I just remember that very first night hearing it. I was leaning back, face up, eyes closed, on these wooden benches, and it was a very tall ceiling where the performance was. I just wondered to myself, how could all this sound be coming from one instrument? Like, it just sounded like an ensemble, all in one, and I was very drawn to it, drawn to the nature of the sound, and so little did I know that would be the night that I would decide to transition from being a lifelong clarinet player to the Kora. So, not the most common transition from one to another, but it was the path for me, and so Kane Mathis was the performer's name, and I went up to Seattle where he lived about a month later to catch him for another show. And this time I talked with him after the show, and I figured out that he was willing to teach. So after acquiring my first Kora from someone living up in Maine, who sent it across on a Greyhound bus to the state of Washington, I started going up to Seattle to take lessons from Kane. That went on for about a year and a half or so. So at that point, I went back to school to finish up my undergraduate degree, and through my school, I was able to get a study contract to go to Gambia and earn a credit towards my music degree as an individual. And so that was the longest of the 4 trips that I took to the continent. That was a 3.5-month visit back in 2008. Then back to Gambia in 2012 and 2018 for 5 and 6 weeks. And then my most recent trip to Senegal last year was for 4 weeks. And Kane Mathis, my US-based teacher, put me in touch with the 2 teachers that I worked with in Gambia, whom he also worked with. And their names are Moriba Kuyateh, and he's the son of my second teacher there, Malamini Jobarteh. Malamini passed away in 2013, about a year after my second visits. And then in Senegal last year, I worked with Youssoupha Cissokho and his son Mamadou Cissokho. Between the 4 of them, I received anywhere between 4 and 8 hours of instruction per day. So I could have a lesson in the morning, afternoon, evening, practiced a lot in between. And on top of that, I was fortunate to be able to stay with their extended families in their compound. And to be very honest, I feel like I was taken care of as if I was one of the family members. And that experience was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced in life. And so the fact that they were willing to go out of their way and take someone from across the Atlantic Ocean to learn their traditional music and also encourage me to share it with audiences here in the States is really a gift. And so I really thank them for letting me do this. And with that said, I'd like to thank you for coming out this afternoon. Thanks. I'm going to give you one more song. And before we get into the questions, I will also let you know that over on this table here, I've got some recordings available. There's 2 of them. They're CDs. So the Orange album is an 8-year-old's release back in 2016. So that one's $15. There's a White album that's brand new. I just released it this last summer. That one's $20. There's a few different ways that you can pay. You can pay with cash or check. For those, there's a small plastic tub right next to the briefcase. So you can just toss your cash or check in there. If you want to pay with a credit card, you can do that. You just need to come see me. Or you can pay with Venmo. If you got a smartphone and you want to pay some way that you've got to there, feel free to scan my Venmo QR code. You can pay that way. I also have PayPal. I need to bring up my QR code for that if you want to go that route. Or if you're like me and you don't have a CD player anymore, you can download the albums digitally on Bandcamp. And I've got my Bandcamp QR code on the very far left of the table. So you can scan it and just download it on your phone, or you can scan it, take it home with you, and look at the address and just put it into your browser at home and download everything on your desktop at home. And then separate from all that, on the far right of the table, there's an email list. As OSHA mentioned earlier, I am on a tour. I live in Washington State, so I usually get out to Massachusetts once a year. So if you'd like to see me perform again, feel free to put your email address in the list, and I'll send out a notification whenever I'm back in the area. And there's also, you can go to my website. I post everything there, SeanGaskell.com. And I also have more QR codes for each of the social media platforms that I post content to, like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Most active on YouTube, posting new videos too. So feel free to follow my page, and you'll just see them as the new ones come out. I'm not sure that she's in the room, but I always do like to thank the hosts who make this possible. There's a lot of work that goes into them. So maybe she can hear us from afar, but can we give a hand to OSHA, please? All right, so I'm going to stand up, and we're going to take a few questions. If there are none, that's fine too. I may have answered all of them, but go ahead.
I'm wondering about material. What is the material of the neck and the string?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't get around to that. So the neck and all of the wood on the instruments. So all the wood that you see here, which is the neck, the two handlebars, and the bato, the notched bridge, are Kano, which I believe Kano is further south on the African continent than where I studied. I think it's in the coastal forest region of Guinea, primarily. So, and then the strings are monofilament fishing line. So anywhere between 30-pound and 200-pound test grade fishing line. So some Kora builders now, when they're using the guitar style tuning pegs, they'll use like harp strings instead of fishing line. So yeah.
What was the original material that was used?
Thank you. Yes. So before 1920, which is when the fishing line became available, they used antelope hide, the skin of antelope. And I've been told by pretty much every single Kora builder that I know there, including Moriba Kuyateh, my primary teacher in Gambia, that the transition from antelope hides to fishing line was very swift, very quick, because it was so much easier to work with.
What kind of skin is that?
Yeah, this one's cow skin. Yeah, and I've never seen anything more than that used. I take that back. The one that I've got at home uses elk skin, but it was built here in the States. So, yeah. Nope, you're just using your two thumbs and your two index fingers, so 4 in total. So a lot to keep track of with 22 strings. The question is, are we strumming or are we picking, or both? And it's a little bit of both. Yep. So, yeah, sometimes you'll hit like 2 or 3 in a row on the same side of the bridge, and it'll give you basically chords in thirds or fifths, depending on how far you're looking ahead. So, yeah. All right. If you want to have did you have a question? Oh, yeah. So we're talking about calluses. I have a little bit. You wouldn't have. I find that I don't have nearly as much callus playing Kora as I would playing guitar. So I feel like you get like way more callus playing guitar because you're just holding those strings down a lot more. Whereas with the Kora, you're just plucking and strumming. So there's a lot less contact, if you will. Yeah.
If the music isn't written down, how long does it take you to learn a song?
Yeah, so if the music isn't written down, the question is, how long does it take to learn a song? Did I say that right? Yeah. Yeah, it's, I think every song's a little different, but generally, like when I start a song for the very first time, I probably, in most cases, don't really bring it out for performance for, 5 or 6 months. But some I get really into right away, and it's all of a sudden like at the forefront. So it's really kind of a mixed bag. Yeah.
Does the instrument and the music have an influence beyond West Africa?
Does the music and the instrument have an influence beyond West Africa? Today, yes. But really before the digital age, not as much. Yeah, it wasn't really known about in other parts of the world like it is now. And again, that's just because of the fact that we have everything at our fingertips now in the digital world. So, yeah. If you would like to have a close look at the Kora on your way out, you're more than welcome to come up. And you're also more than welcome to ask some more questions as I'm packing up my gear here. But I would like to go ahead and give you the last song.
Yes, please, that's what I was going to ask.
Oh, thanks. So, I really hope you've enjoyed. So, I hope you've learned something too. I'm going to give you another song that I wrote. So I'm back in Washington after last year. I moved back. For the 9 years before that, I lived in Asheville, North Carolina. So fortunately, I've been hearing back one by one from the connections that I have there saying, yes, we're all right, we're alive, and the town is absolutely destroyed, especially right along the French Broad River. And so, I've been playing this song with a pretty heavy heart this week. But its origins are very sentimental to me because when I lived in Asheville, one of my favorite places to go was the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The closest corner of it was only about a 45-minute drive from home. And I worked there for a year doing trail maintenance work. And then after that year, I'd go there hiking, backpacking, just really enjoyed getting out of town. And so this particular song was influenced by a backpacking trip that I took with my wife in 2018. And from our campsite, there was a very, very beautiful sunset. And so when I got home the next day, I started putting the song together. It's called Smoky Mountain Sunset. Thank you.